Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and today I'm talking about everyone's favorite, formerly British, now kind of American, but still kind of British sci fi creepy anthology series, Black Mirror. That's right, the series that shows us technology is horrible, and with each new episode we watch, we become further convinced that maybe the Amish are onto something. So season 7 just came out recently. It's one that I was really anticipating. It has the first true sequel to a previous Black Mirror episode. And while season 6 had its highs and lows, the early reviews of 7 was that it's mostly highs. And I'm here to say I kind of feel that way too. I really really enjoyed this season. My goal initially was to do just a straight up review. I thought I'd try something a little bit different. I thought it would be more fun to rank each episode so I could talk about each one, but then discuss, what I liked and didn't like about each one. So, two disclaimers. Number one, I am going to get into spoilers. Number two, I don't dislike or hate any of these episodes. I, in fact, enjoyed each one. So, this is not a list of like the worst to the best or even like my least favorite to most favorite. Well, I guess technically on paper it is, but it is just the ones that I liked versus the ones I really, really liked and loved. So, without out of the way, let's get into Black Mirror Season 7. Number 6, Hotel Reverie. You would think that me being a movie guy, this one would be my favorite. And I kind of thought it would be going in. I thought, oh, they're using like actors and digital AI to, just remake old movies and put current actors into old movies, which has kind of been done before. It was done a little bit in a Creepshow episode on Shudder with Justin Long, and it was kind of done already in Black Mirror with last season's Joan is Awful. And that's partly why Hotel Reverie is last on the list, because I feel like Joan is Awful did this idea, but did it better. I love everyone's performances here. I love the aesthetics here. It's a beautiful story about, a modern day movie star kind of finding comfort and finding a potential new life in the world of this movie, and how Emma Corrin's character, both in the movie and as the actress, kind of merged together. It has a lot of really cool and interesting ideas. It just bothered me a little bit. I know this is Black Mirror, and I know that there is obviously a suspension of disbelief, but even when you have that, a movie and TV show, even sci-fi, even fantasy, has to adhere to its own internal logic. And the internal logic here is that you have to get this actor, you have to put them in the movie, and they have to recite all their lines and basically perform it like a play perfectly to get to the end credits. And it just seems like, look, this show is full of how people in power, rich people, corporations, will exploit and harm the little guy. And that I don't doubt in any way, shape, or form. Yes, it's better and cheaper for the studio to just pay this one actor for 90 minutes of their time rather than remake the entire movie. But if they already have the technology to just put actors in as AI, it feels like the greedy movie studios, that's the step they would use. That's the way they would do it. And it felt like it needlessly complicated it. And oh, well, she's trapped in there and we don't know how to get her out. That's a weird. It's not that it's too weird for Black Mirror, it's that I think the episode doesn't, it very much wants to put a modern day actress into an old vintage movie and figure out a way to do that. And it's a cool concept, but the way that it's being sold is, oh, well, this is the cheaper alternative to just remaking the movie, doesn't make sense from a greedy corporation standpoint, if that makes sense, or if I'm just rambling. Look, I didn't dislike this episode, but it is last for a reason. Number 5, Plaything. This is another one that There's nothing I inherently dislike about it. I don't have any issues with it the way that I did with Hotel Reverie. This one just happens to be in 5th place because I just happen to like the other 4 a little bit more. What do I like about this one? I mean, you've got Peter Capaldi as, this crazy, long-haired wait a minute. No, but I really, really like his performance, and I like the way that they tie it back to, the tech of the '80s, and I love the way they kind of it's not quite a sequel or a spin-off to Bandersnatch, kind of, but it does kind of connect to it with Will Poulter. I love the concept of, we all know that friend. We all know that person, that gamer that like gets fully invested in whatever game that they spend obscene amounts of hours playing. And the idea that this whole season has this greater theme of, AI and digital copies being sentient and self-aware. I say this whole season. The whole series has had that theme kind of running throughout. And this one, I really like that this one puts that tech all the way back in the 1980s in the days of like Super Nintendo and 8-bit games. I think it's a really interesting way to explore it. And I love kind of how surreal it gets, especially towards the end. The reason why it sits at 5th place is despite it having arguably the bleakest ending, which, look, I'm a sick, you know what? I love a bleak ending. And you'll see later on this list how much I love a bleak ending. It doesn't have the kick that the other ones do because of the tone. The episode had this very frantic, chaotic tone that by the time you realize what's happening, by the time it goes for its big finish, where, there are world changing, world ending consequences, it kind of feels like it came out of left field that they were doing that. And you don't really get the impact that I think it could have gotten had it focused on that a bit more, if that makes sense. Number 4, Bede Noir. I hope I said that right. I don't speak French. I can speak English. Yo puedo decir muchas cosas en español, pero no hablo, I don't speak French. But I do speak bully. And this episode, what a you're rooting. We all root for, the victim of bullying to get back at their bully. But then there's this. This episode was like, I love how basically this woman is gaslighting everyone and no one at the same time. First of all, we all know what it's like to kind of have that person we work with, to have that coworker, to have that, oh, they're perfect, everything they do is perfect. And it's annoying, it's frustrating because it reminds us and makes us dwell on our own insecurities and our own flaws. But when Bitch actually has basically the reality stone that anything she says becomes true, this is one that there's an obvious suspension of disbelief that like we're getting really almost into fantasy here. But again, it's not about how realistic it is. It's about does it adhere to its own internal logic. And this one very much does. And I kind of love that the like you have and the episode kind of showcases it. You have potentially infinite possibilities of infinite power, and she uses it to get back at the people who bullied her in high school. So by the time you realize what she's doing, you're like, that's damn, that is like petty, but I get it. This is another one that kind of has world altering consequences at the very end, but I don't feel like it's jumping the shark because it kept escalating in a natural progression. And I think that it's more relatable than say Plaything was because we can all relate to having that person in our lives that just they annoy us because they're so perfect and everything they do just irks us even if they say something we agree with. It annoys us, it bothers us. So this was just a really cool, I think, demonstration of that dynamic that so many of us can relate to in our lives. Number 3, USS Callister into Infinity. I really wasn't sure where to put this one because USS Callister is probably one of, if not my favorite, Black Mirror episode of all time. I remember watching it and thinking, "Oh, Jesse Plemons is in this. Oh, that's not, it's going to be cool to see him play a character different from Todd in Breaking Bad." Yeah, he's like the nerdy sci-fi guy. He's kind of doing the Shatner impression. Okay. Oh my god, he is Todd from Breaking Bad in this. Oh my god, he's a sadist. He's a sick son of a. It goes places. You guys know what I'm talking about with Tommy. So you went through that episode just with all your energy rooting for these digital clones to make it out of his server, to make it out onto the internet. And it does kind of set up that they're going to face new challenges. That being said, this is the first true sequel to an episode, and if you're going to do that, you better justify why you're doing it. Does Into Infinity justify its own need to exist? Kind of. I still would have been satisfied only having the first episode. This doesn't add anything groundbreaking, but I'd be lying if I said at the end of that episode I wasn't kind of curious to see where these characters, these digital clones, would go from here, and what the ramifications of what Jesse Plemons did, what Robert Daly did. That's his character name, I know. In the real world. And I like that this episode really explores that in an interesting way about the whole legality of digital clones, the revelation that there already was a digital clone of him, basically being the 24/7 AI server for the game itself. And I really like this sort of revelation that, is it nature? Is it nurture? Was Robert Daly born a sadist, or did years of being underappreciated, being picked on, turn him into one? And you kind of learn he always was one, that like he's this nerdy guy trapped, and you genuinely feel sorry for his digital clone. Like, I've been trapped here for years, I don't even know what's going on in the outside world. I have no life outside of here. But then the second he's like, "I'm going to make a clone of you to be here with me," you're like, "Oh, there he is. There's the creep we knew from the last episode." It does a lot that I really like. I think it would be higher on this list if it did more to kind of justify its existence, and if it, you know, took the story in a new direction. I'm not sure how I feel about that ending, that they're all stuck in her head. I kind of have to sit on that one. And yes, maybe it's unfair that I'm judging all the other episodes on just themselves, but I'm judging this one on the fact that it's a sequel. But I think if you're going to do a sequel, you kind of have to be prepared for that scrutiny, because they could have just done a different original episode. So that's why I felt like I had to. My way of compromising was to put this right in the middle at number 3. Number 2, Common People. This one frustrated me. And the reason that it frustrated me is because of how plausible I see it becoming. No, not that there's going to be some, you know, massive global neural network that, we're all connected to, but just the concept of, I remember when you could buy software and everything was about buying, and now everything is just leasing and subscribing. Speaking of which, subscribe to this channel. So it's genuinely frustrating to imagine a world of extrapolated technology where you literally have to pay a subscription fee to live. But in a weird way, it kind of also feels like the perfect metaphor for people who require prescription medication, that if they don't get, they will die, but that doesn't make it any more affordable. You have this couple, you have Chris O'Dowd, you have Rashida Jones, that you really you connect with, and you relate to from the very beginning. And it's just the further this episode goes. It's funny, I was watching this one with my wife, and In the beginning, it was funny. It's like, "Oh, that's so funny, you gotta upgrade to Rivermind Plus," and then, like, the ads were like, it had a sense of humor, and we're laughing at it up to the point that it becomes bleak and terrifying and tragic, and I feel like that too is a really interesting metaphor for how I use laughter and humor as, like, a coping mechanism, and as the world gets further and further towards chaos, I'm laughing, I'm laughing, I'm laughing, "That's funny," but it's all just to cover up how, well, tragic and terrifying it is, and this episode kind of ran through all those steps, within the runtime allotted for this episode. So, I loved its concept, the whole idea of, like, people doing crazy, disgusting things for money, basically like an OnlyFans, only with a drop of sadism thrown in there. Then you get to that final, sequence at the end, and it's just heartbreaking. It's bleak because we've gotten to know these characters over the course of this episode, and this was always the natural conclusion, and it frustrates you and it infuriates you when you realize that this is more than just a sci-fi series. This is dystopia. Dystopia is not based on what the future could be. Dystopia is based on critiquing the present. And you wonder how many people met similar fates to these characters because they were unable to afford life-saving medication, life-saving prescriptions that would have kept them going longer or would have increased their quality of life longer. This one just it made me laugh for like the first half, and then it kind of made me uncomfortable for the second half, and then like it hit me in the gut at that end. Uh, which the next one did even more, which is why it's number one. And finally, number one, Eulogy. It was honestly a toss up between Eulogy and Common People as the number one pick. And I went with Eulogy because it's the one that kind of felt it was the most poignant and it made me think inward the most. I'm a guy, I was a history major. I'm sort of, professionally meant to be obsessed with the past, and we all kind of obsess over the past, sometimes at the detriment of our present. And this episode kind of demonstrates the good in that, but also the bad in that. I love how, yes, you have the other actress there playing, the digital avatar, but this episode mostly it's just Paul Giamatti. It almost feels like a play. And there's this simplistic beauty to that, and where we see him going through all the stages. He gives an amazing an Emmy worthy performance that I hope he is nominated and wins for. Because what a poignant episode that shows us the importance of saying what we need to say, being honest and upfront with people, and not being so quick to not being so quick to well, I won the argument. I won. That's victory. When you've won the battle but lost the war. You've forgotten what it was all for. This is the only episode, and I'm not lying. When it was over, you know how Netflix is always like, "Oh, let's start the next one." I needed to pause it because I'm like, I need a minute to process this. And here's the thing, it doesn't really have that bleak an ending. It's not like our main character dies. It's not like, the world ends or anything. But the emotional punch that it packs, the realization that how different could his life had been. It makes me think back, there were certain go back in my past, in my timeline. One little misstep, one little instance of me choosing A instead of B or B instead of A could have led to me not being where I am now, living where I am now, being married, having two children. Go back to this point in my life, if I choose this instead of this, something seemingly mundane, how different is that? And it makes you wonder, what are sort of the infinite possibilities of our lives and what they could have been, and how being petty doesn't get us anywhere. And you feel for this guy the moment when he reads that letter. You're like, oh my god, things could have been different. He spent decades mourning this relationship, mourning everything that could have been, and it still could have been. So maybe it's cheating that the one that just was the most emotionally poignant, I'm putting it number 1, but it's definitely the one that will stick with me the most. But hey, these are just my thoughts. These are just my rankings. These are just my mini reviews. I'd love to know what you thought of season 7 of Black Mirror. What was your favorite episode? What was your least favorite episode? What did I miss? What am I wrong about? Come at me in the comments. It's what YouTube is for. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up trapped as a digital clone, either in a 1940s movie or on some weird Star Trek knockoff show. And as always, every day is Halloween.